afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jo Stewart-Rattray and I'm going to be your MC this evening. But before we go any further, I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the Ngadjuri people on the lands on which I am from, which are the lands of the mid-north of South Australia, and acknowledge them as the people, as the traditional owners of this land. And also to those, the people of the lands on which you are all on today as well. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to all Aboriginal elders from other communities who may be in attendance today. Additionally, I would like to acknowledge the ACS's diversity and inclusion mission as well. ACS supports diversity and inclusion of all types. Diversity and inclusion are important elements to the ACS as we represent a diverse membership from many backgrounds and from many countries around the world. I'm honoured to be MC this evening. I think this is an amazing conversation that Pauline and I will have. Having had a little bit of an insight into her world when we met previously, I'm sure it's going to delight you as much as it delighted me with her insights. I guess also I'd just like to say that, you know, we're prepared to take Q&A from the floor as well, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. But after we've had a bit of a chat ourselves together with some questions that I'm going to be posing to Pauline. So in order to do that, the Q&A component is there's a box on the sidebar on the right-hand side of your screen. So you take the opportunity to ask those questions in that Q&A section, and then Crystal will be able to curate those and send them on to me, and so I can ask Pauline. So I think we've done all the things that we need to do. I don't need to go into any housekeeping because you know where you're joining us from, and I'm sure you know where all the facilities are. So let me, before I go any further, introduce you to Pauline Fatoe. She oversees the strategy and delivery of the ACS labs, including Brisbane City, River City Labs, Sydney's Harbour City Labs and Maroochydores Ocean City Labs, and the Coast to Coast virtual program of the labs. Pauline is co-founder of Something Fest and Something Tech, Australia's Digital Innovation and Technology Festival, co-founder of Seven Sisters Foundation. Prior to enabling startups, Pauline problem solved for 20 years. Problem solved. You must be exhausted. Problem solving for 20 years in digital tech transformation and regulatory change across banking, superannuation, insurance and government. She was co-host of podcast Splash of Colour, founder of Chi Who, personal assistant platform for the busy people, which most of you will be who are on the call today. Pauline is also regional lead for Queensland as part of the Tech Australia Advocates, and I'm just exhausted reading that, Pauline. Greetings, Pauline Fatoe.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be on this, and I'm sorry we can't see all your beautiful faces, but I'm just scrolling through the names, and it's great to have everyone here as well.
That's super. Why don't we just crack on straight away, Pauline? Because we've got, I know I've written down lots of questions for you, and I know they're not just short answers either. So, and we need to give people time to, because I know there'll be lots of questions for you too. Pauline, from what you told me, you came to Australia as a primary aged kid for a short stint, then returned to your home country for a couple of years, then returned again to Australia as a teenager.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's pretty amazing in itself. So what support did you have in Australia when you arrived back here as a young adult?
So I actually, I'll give you a bit of the background of the back and forth. So I came here from to go into primary school to live with my mum for about a year and a half. It was a complete culture shock to come to a primary school here. I was the only brown kid in my grade and nearly in all the school. Don't let my brown skin for you. I'm 44. And so it was a while ago. And so it was in a regional, and not a regional area, it's in an area that, there just weren't a lot of people that looked like me. So it was definitely a cultural shock. The support I had around me was not much, apart from my parents, of course, my stepfather and my mum. And then went back to Papua New Guinea, which is where I'm from, gladly. And then came back again when I went to boarding school. And that was about, I think I was 15 and a half, or just about to turn 16 when that happened. I was in the safety security net and in a very privileged opportunity where my dad's work actually gave me a scholarship to go to a boarding school here, which is why I came back. And so I was very lucky. There was a lot of other people who were on scholarship here, which we all had a shared sort of kindred spirit with us because we were in boarding school. So we were all suffering equally. And basically, we just navigated and made our way through. Post boarding school, I went straight into the workforce. I actually didn't have the luxury to go straight into uni because I needed to work to earn money, and then lived on my own as well. So again, I think the biggest sort of support I had was just my friend network that was around me, and just the figuring stuff out for myself, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that must have been tough as it's still young to be here by yourself and to really only have that friend network. That must have been really something else.
Yeah.
So let's jump forward a little bit and can you tell us a little bit about your career journey to date? Because to me, it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, it's quite varied, and obviously I'm working with startups and scale-ups now in the technology sector. So I work with tech companies that are trying to become a unicorn, the future unicorn, or a high-growth company, what we like to call zebras, and as in they have impact and purpose, and they can make a lot of money, but they may not be a billion-dollar investment or business. So that's where I am now. But prior to that, I worked in corporate and mainly in enterprise system transformations or recovery of those. I was a consultant. That was what I was doing immediately before doing my own startup, which was what led me to my current position. And I basically worked my way up through many different roles across it was about 22 years in that space. And it actually started in a mailroom. So when I finished school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I definitely knew I wanted to work with computers because I favored them more than humans. And I just enjoyed being able to get lost in a computer. And I just knew that was going to be the space I was working in. I think from a very young age, I knew that when my dad first brought home a Macintosh, which was like a tiny screen. At the time, was like that big, and I'd play Space Invaders and Pac-Man on it, which is what it had. So I was like engrossed, and it helped me survive sort of my childhood. So I knew I was going to work in a computer, didn't really know what. So I basically started working in a mailroom, and then it was about a year and a half, I made my way into another role, and then another role, and then eventually, when I got into about my third role within the 2-year period, when that was back then, was MBF, which was a health insurer, and I got a temping role during a peak time where health insurance was recruiting massive amounts of humans just to get through workload, because it was mandated that the whole of Australia had to get health insurance, or in order to prevent getting paying some extra tax. And during that time, I realized that I can keep going down this way, or I actually need to go and study. So I enrolled myself in, I actually had to go and resit my studies so that I could actually pass the test to even qualify to get into university, because I really didn't pay attention during high school or put much effort into it. Anyway, I did, and I got into CQU, Central Queensland University, and I studied information systems. And I did that at night and then worked full time during the day. And as I was studying and navigating, learning all about the cool stuff and the not so cool subjects, I basically also worked really hard just to navigate my career and keep progressing up. By the time I was 23, I was running a billing team for MBF, and that was running all of the actual payments and processing of payments and billing for the whole of the database, which was millions of transactions a month. Or, 1 month was about 42 million, which was the peak. And so I had a large team of 18 people, and I had basically worked my way into that role after putting my hand up for a project role. And in that project role, I was the SME because I worked in the data entry team, and I understood how membership worked, how member services worked. And I was put on a project to basically help implement the new software that they were rolling out. So for 4 years, I worked on that and ended up inheriting the billing team. So I basically, from that point onwards, knew that I was just going to keep going down that path. And I just kept on saying yes to every opportunity. So I've worked for the likes of MBF, as you know, Bupa, that eventually acquired MBF. And then I got poached by Hewlett Packard and went and ran digital systems and implementations for them. I won Salesperson of the Year for Asia Pacific when I sold a $120 million deal for cloud services, which was incidental because I really didn't care about cloud. I cared about the customer's problem, and I was more solving their problem. That came with cloud as well as applications and infrastructure as a BPO contract, business process outsourcing contract. And then I had clients like Combank and then a lot of the other banks that were doing a lot of programs across the Hewlett Packard services in financial services for about 6.5 years that I was there. I made my way from there into consulting. So I had a bit of a period of burnout and started consulting on my own after having a 4-month break from working at anything. And that's because I was more in the golden handcuffs of Hewlett Packard. I had some amazing perks, amazing opportunities, but I worked my butt off and definitely had no life and was a workaholic, and that really loved it, but also definitely had a lot of lessons learned during my 30s in that time. And then, of course, I started then as an independent consultant doing recovery of a lot of the applications that Hewlett Packard used to sell. A lot of clients contacted me when I was on my, little holiday break and said, can you come work for us now and help us with this and then this? And then it just became into a consulting gig after that. And so I was doing implementations plus recovery. And then I decided to do my own startup. So yes, so it's a very, very windy road. I've probably had every role in every department across an enterprise business, large business, mostly multinationals that I worked with. It was lots of fun.
And hard work.
It's hard work.
I'm making notes here, and it's only because I'll do a wrap up at the end because I think there are some extraordinary points that need to be called out, and it might be what I've heard, or it might be what you've said, or a combination of the two. So that's why I've got my head down. One of the things that always is of discussion when we talk about climbing the corporate ladder or climbing our way to leadership, and that's around workplace allies, mentors and sponsors. So, Pauline, I'd be really interested in your view on what are the differences between workplace allies, mentors and sponsors in your view.
Yeah. Well, I think I understand what the technical, hi, doggy. I think I would understand what the technical, so cute. I think I understand what the technical views would be, but I think, so if a workforce ally obviously is someone in your peer group that can obviously connect with you and help you achieve goals, that's one point. Mentor is someone that obviously can help give you guidance and advice and support you in your goals. And then the sponsor is someone that actually actively takes a step to put you forward for something and, champions your career. For me, I had many of those. So I don't know if Joe, if you want me to explain that, but I had many. And I look at it a little bit differently. I think every relationship I come into contact with is just relationship building. And I try not to put people into categories of, oh, that's going to be my workforce ally. Oh, that person's going to be my sponsor and my mentor. I basically try and forge relationships built on authenticity and whether I can really connect with them. And then it eventually turns out to be you connect with people, you build relationships, people hopefully you like, and you end up doing things for each other regardless because you're building authentic relationships that matter. I definitely, during my career, did not set out to recruit mentors or sponsors. I naturally had that because I was very curious into what they were doing. And I asked a lot of questions and I said yes to every opportunity for most of my first 15 years. So during my 20s into my early 30s, I said yes to most things and then put my hand up and volunteered. And I worked the hardest, came the earliest, stayed the latest, did weekend work when I had to. And then I really tried to I was really curious to understand all aspects of business, really. And that means I had to really understand other people and their position in business and in roles that I didn't understand. And it wasn't intentional, to be honest. I was just curious on other people and human interaction. And that's what I suddenly then came across people who did want to sponsor and put me forward for things, or people who'd pick up the phone and go, hey, Pauline, you've been doing this. Would you come and work for us? Or, we've got a problem. Can you come help us out with this? Those are the sponsors. And then if you've got good people that you connect with who are in senior positions and you're curious about what they do, you end up, leaning on them and asking the questions that you have in your mind. So they become your mentors. And then everyone can be a workforce ally. Obviously, you're going to have interactions where you don't, connect with everyone, and that's the reality. But you can spend most of your time walking through life connecting with people, and allies are everywhere at all levels.
Fantastic. So how do you actually go about, if you were to give someone advice on how they go about finding a champion or mentor for themselves, what would you tell them?
Okay, well, firstly, I would say, well, what are you trying to do? Really reflect on what you're trying. What do you need that mentor for? Because I think these days, you can go to a program or a network, a community, or a membership organization, and you can formally ask for a mentor. They exist, right? If you come across someone who is in your network already in your community, they're not formally a mentor, and you would like to, though, ask them a bunch of questions, I always think about considering their time first. And if you have nothing to give them, focus on some form of give first mentality. And I think really think about what you really want from them and be super open to how they navigate your relationship. Don't put any pressure and don't give them any more work. They already have their own day jobs. They're busy. Unless they've signed up to be a mentor somewhere, they probably would get overwhelmed if you approach them and said, will you be my mentor? They'll firstly go, I don't know why you're asking me this and what exactly do you want? Tell me what that is. I don't know if I can help you. I don't know why you need me. So I would craft something of what you actually need from the person and not really formalize it, to be honest with you, because it puts a lot of burden it over engineers something which can be just a beautiful relationship. Literally email them, call them, message them on LinkedIn and ask them if you can take them for a coffee. Or if that's not possible, hey, could I grab 15 minutes of your time? I have a bunch of questions. I've seen your background. I think you could really help me and it relates to X, Y, Z. So give them context and let them say no if they want to say no, if they don't have time. And then if they say no, you go, well, is there anyone else you can refer me to that may be able to help? Or I see you're connected to this person on LinkedIn. Would you mind if I leverage your name and ask them for the help instead because you're connected? Or the other option is going, if this time is not suitable, is there another time that I can grab you? Or are you going to an event that I can come and find you at during the networking and ask you a bunch of questions? But the more information you give them, the easier it is for them to say yes or no. And also to tell them it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, so you're not a burden on their time. Once you break that and you actually get over the other side and can connect with them and have a relationship, they may be more generous with their time. But for the first interaction, try and be really considerate of their space and time.
I think that's a really good point about being considerate of people's time, because I think many times people say no to mentoring because of the potential impost on their time. And
Yeah.
they just physically don't have it. So I guess the thing too is for me is not to be offended if somebody says no to you, because there could be any number of reasons that you don't see. It might be family commitments, it might be huge workload, it might be they play sport or whatever. So you do have to, I think that's a really good point about that, being mindful of the other person's time and going to them with something that's crafted, and also about saying 15 or 20 minutes and keeping to it.
Yes, yes. And it can be really like you got to realize that, like, if you're going to them, you might have 20 other people going to them, especially if you found them on LinkedIn. If they're in your workplace, you obviously can literally invite them to a coffee catch up or send them a Zoom call, give them the context, still book in for 15, 20 minutes, busy search them. There's nothing worse than getting an invite when you already got something scheduled in. So just literally, how do you get to that person and what do you want to really ask them, and be really clear and specific. And also, just one suggestion, I've had this a lot from people of us to connect with me. They ask for me for things that are impossible for me to give them. So really be considerate with what you're asking for. If you're asking someone an open-ended question that says, oh, I've got this, and this, and this. How do you think I can go and land this business? Or how can I close this sales deal? Or can you introduce me to, 4 people in your network? Anything that you're asking them to do more work outside of that 15 to 20 minute time frame, and you're asking them for stuff that is beyond their immediate wisdom that they can give you in a mentoring session, for a first or second meeting or a third meeting, is too much. So just really be considerate with what you're asking for them, off them.
In that case, is it about going with the answer kind of half already framed?
I think so. Like it's having a point of view. Like don't go with a blank page. Like you should have done your research and some work, or you'd have a point of view, and then you basically ask them to give you feedback on it. So we always say in capital raising with investors and founders, if you want money, you don't ask them for money, you ask for advice, and you're most likely to get money at some point. So, going in and asking for advice by giving feedback to something you've already got is always a good suggestion. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, you've talked a lot about asking questions. Is there an art to asking questions in order to gain access to the right people? Because you've talked about, having that curiosity and leaning in. But what's the art of asking questions?
I think if you're asking questions to get introductions to someone else, I basically build a relationship, and I only ask that of people who trust me, because there needs to be a trust built up. I'm not going to ask, like, Joe, I'm not going to go to you and go, I've only met you once before on a call. I'm not going to say, oh, Joe, can you go and introduce me to the president of so-and-so company? I wouldn't do that unless you had a bit more trust and credibility in what I'm doing. So be considerate of that. If you're asking a question that relates to someone who can provide you guidance or advice, I would be open and transparent as possible. Don't try go in with everything. So have a point of view, but be really open and flexible to someone's advice and critique of that. Some people get very defensive once they start to ask a question and get some feedback from someone if they don't like the answer. So I would literally just, the way of asking a question is to be, provide the context of why you're asking, ask the question, be as direct as possible, and then be really open-minded to what the answers may be, and then provide more clarification and insight to the context if you didn't get the answer that you were like, if it wasn't comprehensive enough, I guess. I think the art is being as authentic as possible. People can tell when you're not authentic. People can tell when you're in a session or in a coffee with someone, and you spend, you've got a 20-minute session with someone who's mentoring, or you're asking them a favor, and you spent 15 minutes of that 20 minutes talking about everything you know and do. Then you've left 5 minutes for the session, and then it's like the person's going to be like, well, why did you come and see me? So I think truly try and be as, efficient as possible when asking, and direct and authentic. At the end of the day, you guys have to take more, people have to take more risks in being able to ask boldly. I have a large network now where I can literally just text my question without even saying hello. I just go, hey, here's my question. So if you build that kind of authentic relationship in your network all around you, and you leave people better than what you arrived at, you can form such an informal relationship that asking is so easy.
Great. I like that. Asking can be easy. What if someone says no? If you ask them to be your mentor, or you ask them, to give you some advice, what if they say no? What do you do?
Well, firstly, you don't get offended like we talked about earlier. I don't like asking anyone to be my mentor. So that's the first thing, because it is just such an awkward thing. And I've had that asked of me before, and I'm like, okay, well, what do we do now? Look at each other awkwardly and dance? I don't know. So it's like, just ask them for a few hours of their time. Can I catch up with you again? So when you meet them the first time, ask them again. The second time, can I catch up with you again? Now, if they say no, the reality is it's a myriad of things and it has nothing to do with you, unless you are a complete, utter, I won't swear, so-and-so that they don't want to interact with you again. Right. Which is slim. Like, you can kind of sense that, and you probably wouldn't have liked them. So you would have rubbed each other the wrong way around anyway. So if someone says no, I would just go, okay, well, that's fine. No problems. Is there anything I can do that we can connect in another way or at another time? Would that suit better? And if not, I completely understand. So give them an out. But at the end of the day, don't take anything personal. We just don't have time to take things personal. So I'm pretty thing on moving on to the next. So if someone says no and I can't get their time, there are millions of people online and millions of people around us that we can tap into in this world. Our world is extremely accessible now, and we have a global network that we can tap into. So please don't get hung up on one person saying no. Just move on swiftly. Ask them also if you can do anything for them in exchange, and then that might soften that and go, well, can I meet you at another time? Or is there anything I can do for you?
I think that's nice. I mean, I must admit, when I've been asked whether I'd be a mentor, there's something about that is a bit gobsmacking. It's like, you want me to do what? And it's hard. It's like, you do need to know the person before you can actually even say yes to sign on to something like that. And you need to understand you said it before, what they're looking for. Are they looking for a long-term commitment, or is it just a piece of advice around a couple of things that they know you've had experience with? So I think I like that notion of not asking them to be your mentor, but rather asking you for some advice. And I've got several women who I do that with, and they do with me. I've often called people like that my shining lights, because they're people who just often shine a light on the thing that's been giving me so much angst or grief. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, of course. But that's because, you do go with that half-framed solution to begin with, and then you run it past them. And I've got one friend, he's now become a friend, but he was my board mentor originally, and tough love. And he'd say to me, have you lost your mind? Have you just heard what you've said? And I've gone, actually, he's right. And at that time, that's what I needed, somebody who was going to be tough with me. So when we were speaking, and we had a little touch on it earlier, that this notion of yours of lean into curiosity and focus on the other person's world. How do you do that, Pauline? I mean, I think, as I say, that I loved that notion, but I went away and I thought about it. I thought, how in practical terms do you actually do that?
Yeah, so I get to meet a lot of people, new people, each week, whether it's a Zoom call or in events that I attend. And I probably, so people always go, well, so what do you do? Which I hate. I just go, I work for the ACS Labs. We work with startups and scale-ups. And then I go silent. I go, oh, so what do you do? And then I just listen. I probably spend I ask them to give me an overview and of what they do. And I just really listen intently, and I ask a bunch of questions. And what I'm doing, the questions I'm asking are questions that can connect them to me. So I'm doing the work for them. So where I think that what they're telling me has some correlation to my interests or to my work, I then connect the dots. And then I talk to them about, then they end up asking me what I do now and exploring a bit more of that. And then I lean into going, oh, well, okay, I understand how that works, because if you're doing that here, we could probably work together in this way. So I naturally try and connect the dots during an interaction and try connect our worlds if I can. If I can't, then I know maybe that person's not in my network or meant to be in my network, and we're just saying hi and I'm just getting to know another human. So I try and do that. If I have if someone's, engaged me for like a partnership call or a sponsor or a founder even, I do exactly the same thing, but because we've got a structured meeting not a structured meeting, they can only book me out and they just put in what they want to get out of the call. And if I know nothing about them, I again do exactly the same thing. And then I ask them at sometimes with partners, I go, well, firstly, thank you for explaining what you guys do. What would you like out of this meeting? And I actually ask them that. I go, what would you like out of the meeting? And they start talking, because people who have booked you or asked you to engage with them, they normally have a preconceived idea of what they want to get out of the interaction with you. So I'm pretty open and honest, and I've come to situations where I've had meetings with people or in events, and it's just nice to know that, okay, well, we don't have a future together, or I just say, look, I'm not sure how we can work together in the future, but I'll connect with you on LinkedIn, and let's, if there's ever a time that we needed to reconnect, please, sing out to me and let me know. But it's really quite casual, informal, because the biggest thing is when people are meeting new people, they don't necessarily, they're equally as nervous or uncomfortable as you are. And I think that's the biggest learning I had, is that most people hate networking. Most people in work environments also don't have a lot of time for small talk or chat unless you already know them. So at times they're nervous. Even the senior people or the mentors, they're trying to navigate you as much as you are them. So if you can be as, informal without being unprofessional, meaning rude, as possible, and try to be direct, you'll find that everyone is just trying to figure out how to get to their outcome as quick as possible these days. I don't even know if I answered your question. Did I answer your question?
No, you did. You did. And I think that's true about, everybody has the capacity to be nervous. That's for sure and for certain. Mm-hmm. One of the things also you and I talked about was you said that we are often unwittingly, but we are chasing connections.
Yes.
What does that mean? What does that mean, chasing connections?
Oh, well, I think we're human. So by nature, we actually need other people. I sometimes laugh and I think about how we've come to the society that we have today in this day and age, and how we're moving into technology in different ways and connecting now with, machines in different ways. If everything you look at in this world is, I'm trying to relate and connect to someone else so they will see me and understand me. And everyone is walking around this earth doing exactly the same things. And now we're programming machines to be exactly the same. They're connecting and they're looking to be seen, and we're looking to see them. And that's everything by design is that in the world. So if you think about it and you think like that, everyone is looking for a place to belong and to be seen. So give them that space.
Okay. I'd just like to take you back before we go to questions, because we're getting quite a few questions coming in. I'd like to take you back to when you first came to Australia as a young adult, because I found your approach to cultural assimilation when we talked really interesting and different from lots of stories I've heard from other women who've come from different cultural backgrounds to Australia. And so can you explain that approach? And I'm sure that a lot of our audience members, just having a quick look, I'm sure that because we look like we have people with interesting backgrounds. So I think your story will resonate just as it resonated with me. So tell us about cultural assimilation.
Yeah, I think, and this is people sometimes, when I first say this, and I've done a number of diversity talks over the time, and they are quite shocked because everyone in the world today is telling you to be yourself, be unique, show who you truly are and all of that. Yes, that is great. And it applies to some people. You can be that. You can be all yourself and you can show up exactly how you want to. I found that if I did that, when I did that, actually, especially when I first entered the workforce, I remember I was working for the professionals real estate while I was actually working I was studying at night, my information systems. And I was doing an admin role, and I had an international accent when I first came to Australia. So they couldn't really pick where I was from. And anyway, so I actually had my boss, she finally had the courage to ask me where I was originally from. And then she goes, "Oh, that's the place where the women feed piglets through their own breasts, right?" I was literally, firstly, I just started laughing because I didn't know what else to do. And I just said, she's my boss. So I just said, sure, yeah, that's where they do that. And I didn't care because it was like, at the end of the day, I'm strong enough in my own culture that's like, sure, you've watched National Geographic or something and seen a couple of things, great. And I just laughed my head off, but it gave me a signal to understand that like there is a lot of people who are completely unaware of what goes on outside of Australia and definitely outside of their own house. So what I had to do was, and what I felt like, I felt uncomfortable in that environment, and plus many other roles where I know I didn't fit in. I looked different, I spoke a bit different, but also my thinking was different because I hadn't been aware of how these environments worked. So I observed a lot of people and I assimilated. I literally would see how the men would do business and I would replicate what they were doing. And especially when I went into MBF and then started getting more senior roles and then into Hewlett Packard, I'm still learning to today. I'm doing a lot of work in the investment community and I'm learning about investment, and most of those rooms are filled with men. And so I still am learning and observing. So when I say assimilate, is what I mean is if you have no idea of how a room or an industry or a system works, human system as well as machine, you have to basically adjust and adapt to them. You have to meet your customer where they are. You have to meet your audience where they are. So my view is you have to assimilate. So when we're telling companies to go and grow a business, we're saying go and get intimate with your customer, but meet them where they are. Where do they live? Where do they read? What news forums are they on? Where are they shopping? That's how you assimilate. So if I'm saying that to founders and companies who are building business and growing to meet their customers where they're at, that's how I believe you would get anything done. So when I came, I definitely assimilated. I culturally knew that I was different and I had to learn the way of the traps. And then my goal was, I'm going to get to the top or wherever that is in order to be myself. And now I can be 100% myself. And that's because I've learned the cultural nuances on how to navigate the worlds and navigate the industries, navigate the conversations. But they also have learned to navigate me, and I've built enough of a network and a brand and credibility that allows me to be myself. I've got markings all over my body. It's my traditional markings from my country, and they're going to just grow because they end up all over my body. It's a 7-year process. So people have to get used to that, and they are very accepting. They're tolerant. These days is so much better than what it was 20 years ago. But you still have to be able to meet your audience or your customer or the other people where they're at. And sometimes where they're at is completely different to yours. I find it easier for me to do that work because I have 100% responsibility over my experience on Earth rather than me forcing someone else to try and meet me where I'm at, because I think I have the capacity to do that. So I do it.
I love that. I love that. I love that whole idea of striving to assimilate, and then once you've made it, essentially, excuse me, go back to being Pauline. I love that.
Yeah, and that could be 10 times in one day, even today.
Oh, okay. I love that. That's even better.
Yeah, because it's every person that I meet. Like I may know nothing about them or their industry, so I have to like connect with them, meet them where they're at. And then by the end of the conversation, I'm back to Pauline because I've paid enough attention to listen to them and learn from them.
It's almost too about paying respect, isn't it? I mean,
It is.
you're respecting the other person.
Yeah, I feel like I look at every human as in they've got their own backstory and experience, and I know nothing about it. So
Correct.
I literally am walking in
Yeah.
constantly learning that I know nothing about that other world. And so I have to be patient and listen, and I'll learn a lot from it.
That's such an important thing because you look at somebody and you think you know them, right?
Mm,
You see, you look at me and you see a redheaded white skinned woman and you think you know what my
yeah,
backstory would be. And it may not be. It may be something totally different and totally unexpected.
correct. Correct.
So I think that's the other thing is that we just need to be that respect and show that respect, but also um, take the approach and the time to learn about the other person. I think that's the best bit of it.
Sorry, Joe, I'll just add to that, like taking
Yeah,
the time
please.
to learn, right, is, and so guys, don't get me wrong, it's not like you have to spend hours with them and learn about everything in their profile. Um, it's asking a few very clever questions to get to the heart of a person very quickly. So when you go, you get on a call, you don't have to go, oh, where does your grandparents live? And this, and this. You don't have to do that. It's literally just asking some clever questions. Like, what would you be willing to answer? Like, Joe, you did it very well when we first met. You asked about my background. It was open-ended. And, you could say to the person, oh, can you just give me a bit of context about who
Yeah,
you are and where you're from? Like just just so I've got some background about you. That gives the person a window to create some intimacy with you.
really good point. And then it's much easier to ask the next question once you've done that as well. So we've got some questions coming in, Pauline. So I'm going to ask you the first one. It says, first one is, I almost feel guilty for asking someone to be my sponsor or mentor, and I struggle to get past that. What advice can you give me to overcome that feeling?
Yeah, I think nervousness, or let's just say guilt is one thing. Nerves might be another. You might be a bit scared or fearful or nervous. Nerves are good. You should always take it a little bit serious and be a bit nervous about asking someone else for something. I still have nerves when I'm doing stuff, but you basically relabel it. I'm a bit nervous because I care. And then I truck on and keep going. Because at the end of the day, I think people get really uncomfortable to ask for stuff because they identify too much with, oh, I'm not worthy of receiving. I'm asking, but I'm not worthy of the answer. I'm not worthy of their time. So it's like you kind of have to think about it as a practical thing. If it's a work-related thing and you're asking for someone to be a mentor or sponsor, again, going back to what Joe and I said earlier, like I don't think really don't start your conversation by asking for that. Because if you don't have a good enough relationship with that person and you haven't met a few times, don't put yourself in a position of vulnerability where you're asking for that from directly from the go. Ask that after your third meeting or your fourth meeting. And then really be clear about what that means. If you're asking for someone to be a sponsor, you don't have to say be a sponsor. Just ask them for what you want. I would like you to I've got a letter of intent. Can you please sign it? I will do the template just to support me now that you know a little bit about my business. Or I've got this role that I'm putting forward. Would you be open now that you've met me a few times to be a reference for me? Or you're on the board of this. Would you be able to put me forward now that I've met you a few times and you know a bit of my background? Or is there anything else I can give you to give you that sort of context and background that you would support me on this application I'm doing? But meet
Excellent.
them first and build a relationship. Don't just ask for what you want from the day one meeting. That's awkward. That's awkward for everyone.
That is great advice. That is great advice. Another question is, speaking of trust, have you ever found that you've been given bad advice after following it?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so advice is only good as the context you have given the person. At the end of the day, when you're asking questions and you're asking someone for advice, you have to take 100% responsibility for the outcome. The reason why I say that is because A, did you give them enough information to give you an answer? B, were they the right person to ask in the first place? Do they have the background and the experience exactly relevant to your ask? And C, you may have executed it in a way that is not how they would have done it. So they're not responsible. You are at the end of the day. So I definitely think I've definitely had many experiences where I've received advice. It doesn't necessarily work out, but at the end of the day, that's my experience and I own it. So
yeah, look, that's
be
interesting.
selective. Be selective.
Be selective. That's a good bit of advice.
Yeah, and it's also it's your responsibility to apply the correct context and background to actions. It's not theirs. If they're a mentor or someone and they're not in your world, it's not on them to know exactly how it is. They're not going to give you a template. It's about just getting enough of feedback from people to contribute to your own idea.
You know, I sometimes find that that whole notion of just talking it out can sometimes, you know, you have your own aha moment about it and go, great that Pauline said that, because now I actually know which way I need to go. And it might not actually have been what you said, but it was the context in which you said it, or the environment, or your approach to it, whatever. But sometimes it just gives you that, and it gives you that, well, she told me 3 things. 2 of those I'm definitely going to do. The other one I don't feel so comfortable with. And that's all right too. That's that being selective.
100%. Having the discernment to know what's right from wrong for you.
That's so important. Now, we have another question. How do I keep the relationship mutually beneficial over time?
I think it's like, you know, I don't think there's any science to it. My opinion is you always ask the person, is there anything I can do to help you? Whenever I've got an ask or I've finished a call and someone's helped me out, I go, please tell me if there's something I can do for you. That's the first thing. Now, if it's the other way around and I have someone who's taking and not giving or contributing anything back to me, I'm a pretty direct person. So I literally just go, okay, I've spent like 4 sessions with you. I think I've helped you all I can. I really loved connecting with you and meeting with you, but my capacity over the next few months is really strapped. So I keep me updated with how you're going. But at the moment, I just can't reconnect.
Okay, so when you say that to me, I know what you're doing.
Yep, pretty much.
Okay, all good. That's good. Pauline, if you had, just sort of thinking about all of the things that we've said and the things that particularly have come up in these questions from our audience, if you had only one piece of advice to give in relation to finding the right allies or the right sponsors or the right mentors or the right role, in fact, what would it be?
It would be build relationships first.
Build relationships. I love that.
Whether you're in the shopping centre and you've just met a stranger walking who's inquired about something, or you're in a business meeting or you're at a networking event, is build relationships first, and you'll be pleasantly surprised how things will just come to you and opportunities will come to you because you've built authentic relationships first.
It's fantastic. Do we have any more questions? Looks like not, which means it's my turn to tell you what I think I heard. And that might make people ask some more questions too. I was touched when you said, Pauline, right at the get-go, that when you first came to Australia, that you really you were in culture shock being the only brown kid in school. I mean, that must have been quite shocking for somebody with very little support, except for those in your, you know, like your shared other scholarship recipients and that friend network. That must have been really hard for you. And I can't imagine it personally. I've been the only redhead, but it's a little bit different. You know, you just get called a ranger and given a hard time, but it's very different from that ongoing issue that you faced. And so I loved that idea of that, the whole notion of cultural assimilation. To me, that made sense. And perhaps even as a 14-year-old, had you been aware of that, it may have been a bit different, who knows? But that's something that you build up over experience and time. So all power to you. So you started off with consulting, or you were consulting before starting your own business, which you must have been a very young woman when you did that. And that's after you'd been spending some years working in the corporate world. So again, you know, moving from the mailroom to really, I think, to being a role model for other young women was pretty extraordinary. I loved the idea that you loved losing yourself in computers, because I think that's the true brand of a nerd, and you and I share that very definitely. I was about 5 when I had that realization that this was my world. You know, I wanted to conquer these machines, and I'm still learning. You know, you climbed up the corporate ladder through study, working full time, and worked your way to leadership. I mean, that to me was through hard work and through connecting with some incredible people along the way, as you've said. I love that you said that an ally is someone in your peer group, and a mentor will give you guidance and advice, where a sponsor is actively putting you forward and will champion your career. And I think they're the unicorns. I think we find less of those people in our lives. Your advice about connecting and building an authentic relationship is so valuable, because I think oftentimes we don't do that. We don't think about the relationship that we're building. We chase the connection and then we don't know what to do with it sometimes. Being curious and saying yes to most opportunities. I'm sure there were people who there were bells ringing for them that this is something that they either are doing or should be doing, perhaps, because, you know, even if it's a volunteering opportunity, it can give you so much heartfelt stuff as well as professional. So, in fact, I tell the story that I was not particularly happy with the job that I was in, and I was in helps. I was in Chicago, Illinois for a committee meeting, and there was another Aussie who came and sat down alongside of me and said to me, "Oh, Jo, are you happy where you're working?" And I went, I never ever would say no. So I said, "Oh, you know, I never knock back potential opportunities." And he said, "Oh, we need someone in our firm just like you." And so 6 weeks later, I had a brand new job.
That's fantastic.
It's pretty cool, right? But that's that whole thing about never say no to opportunities, right? And that was a volunteering opportunity that led me to a great new job. So also it's about the notion of considering the other person's time, I think, is really important, and the notion of the give first. And that notion of asking them for coffee or 15 or 20 minutes of your time, to me, that's gold as well, because I will find 15 or 20 minutes for someone, but I can't find an hour to do a structured mentoring program with them. I just don't have the headspace and the bandwidth to do it. And, you know, being considerate and staying to that time, I think, is great, because you automatically build the trust that you're talking about by doing that, by just, you know, being honest about it. Apparently, we still have a few more questions. So I'm going to stop right there and just say that I'm going to now listen intently to those questions so you can answer them too. So let me have a little look at what questions we've got. What should I prioritise in my career now that... What should I prioritise in my career now? It's all right now, that will help me build stronger networks later. So what should I prioritise in my career now that will help me build stronger relationships later?
So I think you can build relationships with immediate peer group that you're in your workplace. So definitely going to sort of the cross-functional departments, whether it's like, you know, businesses have all hands meetings, or they have some form of an event or social. I remember in my 20s especially, I went to a lot of the social activities that were happening. Even within the peer group, I would turn up and then there'd be a whole bunch of other departments or teams there at a social event. So being able to go and access your peer group immediately, I think is very helpful for later. A lot of the people that I've worked in business now, I met years ago in other organizations, and we've just kept that relationship going. The other part is actually trying to attend events like this. Obviously, this is a webinar, but actual online other events or communities or meetup groups or networking events in your specific space, or even just online with chatting to a bunch of people. If you're on sort of, different tech forums, you can create networks anywhere and connections everywhere. And I would just say, be curious about the people you're meeting, because you just never know where it's going to be giving you access or support later. And likewise, you might be supporting them later. So there is no sort of wrong answer. You should try and do as much as possible. I don't know how old you are, but I think the 20s and 30s is just to truly get out there and do as much as possible. Say yes to everything. You can start saying no in your late 30s and 40s, 50s. So after you've built the network, you can start putting boundaries and go and being selective with where you go and spend your time when it comes to networking events.
Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice too. Do you think mentors should have an expiry date, or should they be an ongoing connection?
I think you'll be mentored for the rest of your life, like if you choose to. I think I'll be mentored forever, but I'm mentored by peers. I'm mentored by people in my team, within my team who are teaching me something. I think there's too much of a there's too much formality put into these mentoring roles in just the way you're asking that question, to be honest with you. So I think if anything, do you ever say that your friend expires their friendship? So I think it's important to look at mentors not as this external thing that you're going to get something out of, but it's a forging relationship which is two-way.
Yeah.
It may not be two-way to start with, but it eventually might be. So you might be giving something back later. So just keep that in mind. Don't build relationships that are transactional. They're quite soulless, and they also take energy from you.
I was going to say they take up so much time and energy. It's not even fun. How do I gracefully transition from being mentored to becoming a mentor myself?
Wait for people to start asking for you advice. Then you'll know.
I also think about that. It's as you've just said, we continue to be mentored all of our lives. At my stage in my career, I still have people that mentor me that I ask advice of. I think that's something that is just, part of the course, isn't it?
And if you have like deep domain expertise, like over a number of years in a particular area, you could always sign up for a formal mentor program to transition into that and do that, a few hours a month and just test it out. But if you have a lot of people coming and asking and leaning in to ask you questions, they obviously value something that you're giving them, or insight and wisdom. And so just allow that transition to happen. Don't turn it off and on. Sometimes I mentor, sometimes I don't.
And also it is about being selective as well, because sometimes you just don't have the time for it. And you've already talked to that, and that's an important thing. We've got time for just one more question, I think, and it's, how do I keep growing my network meaningfully over time, not just collecting contacts? That's a good question.
Yeah, I like to, again, create a personal connection with someone. So when people come and I meet them at events, I have a whole bunch that try and give me their business card. I immediately say, no, I won't do that. But I have a chat to them, and then I'll go, we'll connect on LinkedIn. And then if I really would like to connect with them again, straight away I'll send them a message and go, are you available for a Zoom 15, 20 minutes the following week or the following fortnight? Just so that I could actually get to know them more beyond the networking event or immediate first introduction. I think the creating meaningful connection, you have to have some connection with that person at multiple levels. I think it's your chemistry with someone. Like, are they cool? Are you cool? Like, do you feel that vibe? Or is it you connect on multiple different, interest points, like you are all both obsessed with Macintosh computers or whatever it is back in the 80s. Whatever it might be, like I think if you have multiple personal interactions, so if you've got chemistry and some interest points, it's easier to hold a connection. I remember like going through so many events and like just connecting with random people, and it was just so exhausting. I just don't do that anymore.
And you can, if you look at your LinkedIn connections, you can cull connections. That's the other thing. You look and think, I haven't talked to that person forever, and I actually don't believe I now have a connection with that person. So you can actually do that. That's not a bad thing to do either. Pauline Fatoima, I'd say thank you so much for not just your wisdom, but also just your amazing story and your willingness to share it with us tonight. It's been sensational. Thank you very much. And I'm sure if we were in person somewhere, there'd be a huge round of applause for you right now. So, Pauline, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely my pleasure. And I now need to go to a slide, I believe. Somebody's going to give me a little slide so I can tell you about upcoming events. So before we finish, I'd just like to inform you that ACS offers a wide range of events which you can join virtually or in person at your local branch. Visit the ACS events page to find out more. We will also be announcing our next webinar in this series very soon, so do keep your eye out for it. We are also dedicated to providing you with better experiences, so your feedback is really valuable. Please take a minute to complete our post-event survey via the link in the chat. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and all please have a great evening. I've absolutely enjoyed our time tonight, and thank you.
Thank you, Jo. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, team.